Farhan, Gabe, welcome. Great to see you guys.
Thanks,
Great
Dave.
to be with you.
This would be better with a live studio audience where we could get like a big applause or something. But Farhan, you're the MLB Executive of the Year, and Gabe, you're the National League Manager of the Year. Those awards just were announced in the last few days. Congratulations. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks. I would say I think both of us would trade those in for another crack at the Dodgers, but we're really appreciative of the a recognition, and Cap and I both talked on how these are organization awards, and really grateful for our staff, the players, and of course all our great fans. Kind of thinking back over the season, especially that last month when we were making that push. I just felt like we had the best home field advantage in baseball, and it was so huge. So obviously really grateful, but really more excited about the accomplishments of the organization collectively and the direction we're headed.
Gabe, you echo those thoughts?
I do. Farhan said it pretty well. Also it definitely feels like acknowledgement that we get to share with fans and everybody on this call as well. So not much more than that. Definitely a very cool honor, but only as exciting because we get to share it with so many people.
I didn't get an award, but I would trade in whatever award I would have gotten for another crack at the Dodgers too.
Yeah, that's definitely a no-brainer. That last game still has a little bit of sting, surprisingly.
Yeah. A friend of mine wrote a song about the Wilmer Flores check swing call, and it made me feel a tiny bit better because I did chuckle and laugh at it. It's a pretty good little song. I'll have to play it for you guys sometime. We actually have a lot to talk about tonight. I mean, it's amazing. The World Series ended like 10 days ago, or I guess a couple weeks ago now. But we have a lot to get to. I figured we also have a ton of questions submitted from our season ticket members, and a lot of good ones that we're going to get to as well. But maybe we should start with, there was news this afternoon. Brandon Belt is coming back. He's accepted his offer. So who knows, you guys may work out a longer deal with Brandon. I'm sure that's not totally off the table, but we know for a fact that Brandon Belt's coming back in 2022. Seems to me that's just terrific news. Your guys' reaction to what came down today?
I'm trying to figure out if Far wants to jump in or if I should.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. Obviously, when Brandon was on the field for us last year, he was among the league's best hitters, and I think he just sets such an awesome example of what we're trying to accomplish in the batter's box. He's such a solidifying force at first base. Obviously, an excellent defender, and then what he brought from just a pure comedic standpoint, the way he lightened the mood in the clubhouse, and the way he brings the energy level up. I really think he was the most confident version of Brandon Belt over the course of the last few years, and I think he would say the same, and just means a lot to this club and to the clubhouse.
Yeah, I echo all that, and I guess I'll amend my previous statement about getting another crack at the Dodgers. We would trade in both of our awards for another crack at the Dodgers with Brandon Belt healthy. So, he was so terrific for us down the stretch. Offensively, he's everything we want in a hitter, the way he plays the team game, the way he grinds at bats. And, really the last couple of years, we've seen him come into his own a little bit. From a power standpoint, I think he thanks the assistance of the ballpark dimension adjustments that we made. But just a quick story about Brandon. Cap commented on his sense of humor. Down the stretch when he was pretty much hitting a homer every day and carrying the team, Cap shared this story that he went up to Cap in the dugout after one of these many homers and said, tell Farhan and Scott that I'm willing to accept a 1-year deal. And he had his little dramatic pause, and then he said, for $1 billion. And so today I was, he actually sent a nice text to me and Cap about the awards we won, but added a you're welcome, because it was all to the credit of the captain, which we agreed with. But today on our thread, after we got news that he accepted the qualifying offer, I said, by my calculations, we still owe you $981.4 million. So so he knows that's and he said I'll take that in deferral. So he's being very flexible with that. But just love the exchange with him, and we're thrilled, absolutely thrilled to have him back.
Yeah, the sense of humor. I mean, it's always been there, but it really has come out these last couple of years. His personality is just terrific. I'm not the most social media savvy, but I think today he may have a new nickname because the captain stuff. I mean, that's definitely sticking. But today he said something like "Daddy's back" or "Daddy's coming home" or something.
He's been pretty consistent with that nickname as well throughout. And since Farhan shared that story, I'll also say when he comes into the dugout, the player after a home run, after the many home runs he hit, the players chant "Daddy." That's just the way it goes. And I think it's interesting. He had 2 significant injuries this year, but other than that, he's a really durable player, and he can post every single day when he's feeling good. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we can figure out a way to take really good care of him next year and get a full season out of him. And I would imagine that would be a really good end result.
Farhan, did you put a no bunting clause in his contract?
Daddy's going to do what Daddy wants to do. I think there really is a time and place for it. And, when a guy like that, leading off an inning or in certain scenarios, lays it down. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see whether there are changes in the rules about defensive positioning next year, which is on the table. Maybe that takes, the bunting against the quote unquote shift off the table. But I got to admit, I love a good bunt against the shift. And there's definitely a time and a place for it. And he's actually a great bunter. So, and I'm sure he would say that if you asked him to. But again, time and a place for it. But we like the homers too.
Yeah, I'm only half kidding because I think he's the best bunter you have. I mean, he's an excellent bunter, but I think that's the second time in his career now he's been hurt trying to bunt. So
that's true.
It stings a little bit when that happens.
I wish we could give Brandon's bunting skills to some others. He's so capable. And you're right, Dave. I think if you had to get a bunt down and everything was on the line, you'd ask Brandon to do it.
You did a million things well this year as a team, like so many things well.
That wasn't one.
Bunting wasn't at the top of the list. Like there were a lot of things you did better than bunt this year, but that's okay. The rule things too. I was on a seminar call with some MLB people today, and Joe Martinez, a former Giants pitcher who's become an important part of the MLB office, was presenting to us about the changes that were made in the minor leagues and the results. I'm sure you guys have seen some of the slides and all the data that came out of there. We can save that for another Chalk Talk because we got a lot to get to tonight. But a lot of really fascinating stuff came out of the experimentation that they did at the minor league level. So who knows? It's probably going to take a while for some of those things to trickle to the big league level, but there's a lot of interesting stuff there, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, really the lowest hanging fruit for us is just pace of game and the pitch clock. I think has been a tremendous success everywhere they've tried it. And I think for all fans, baseball has a very unique pace, which I think is part of what makes the game special, but you don't want it to drag. So the pitch clock and some of the other things now, like you said, they've experimented with bigger bases and shifting limitations. And, a lot of it's been good feedback, and baseball is a game of tradition, and kind of some of those old traditions and habits die hard. But to make our game more exciting and more contemporary, it's a great thing that we're doing all of this kind of trial and error at the minor league level. I
mean, just as a little teaser at the minor league, at the low A level for us, San Jose Giants League, with the pitch clock, they started the year without it. Game times average right about what a big league game time would average, 3 hours and 5 minutes, something like that. And then they put the pitch clock in, and game times dropped to 2:41 on average. Like that's a big drop for just an immediate implementation of the pitch clock. So anyway, interesting stuff we can talk about down the line. Gabe, I did want to ask you too, because some of the news since the season ended has been on the coaching front as well. and you guys talked about this in the papers, and there was, some stuff about it when it came out. But Donnie Ecker accepted a position with the Rangers, and you had a couple. Ron Wotus, we know, is moving on from a full-time coaching role, so you had a couple slots to fill. You filled those. Maybe you could tell our season ticket members, for those who might have missed the news of your new coaching assignments.
Sure. Well, obviously, I think everybody knows that Donnie Ecker did a tremendous job for us last year. He really did a nice job both in our meetings and the dugout, preparing hitters, making mechanical changes. He was awesome. So the Rangers, of course, saw that talent and made him their bench coach. And so that's a pretty major hole to fill on our coaching staff, and not an easy one to fill. But interestingly, I think we have a chance to be really good in our hitting department again next year. We've added Pedro Guerrero. Pedro was the assistant hitting coach in Philadelphia over the course of the last 4 years. Prior to that, he was in the Dodgers minor league system. I've known him for a really long time. As good of a human being as exists. Really, really bright, a native Spanish speaker from the Dominican Republic. One of the things that has been important to us as an organization is ensuring that all of our native Spanish speaking players have Spanish speaking staff members to bounce things off of, but not just in the clubhouse when we have an opportunity to grab an interpreter, but also in the dugout in real time when things are happening really fast. And we want Thairo Estrada and Wilmer Flores, who speaks excellent English, but his native language is Spanish. We want those guys to have the same real-time, quick-hitting information that Mike Yastrzemski has and Brandon Crawford and others. And so Pedro is very well equipped to manage that process. He and Justin Veely, our other major league hitting coach from last year, who steps into kind of the lead role this year, have worked together in the past and worked very well together. And have been in dugouts together before. And then Dustin Lynn, our assistant hitting coach and hitting director, returns in the same role and is going to manage the cage the same way he did so well last year. You mentioned, Dave, that Ron Wotus is not going to be our third base coach next year. I have a big poster up in my office right now of Woe on the wall. We all think the world of him, and he's going to be helping in some capacity, just not a full-time role for us. Mark Hallberg, who was in the cage last year, one of our assistant coaches, is going to move to third base. He'll also be responsible for controlling the running game in the dugout. So he's great at researching what's going on with opposing base runners, has a really good feel for opposing pitchers and what tips and tells they might give away. So he's just on top of the details, which is going to make him a really good third base coach, very confident in that. And then Taira Uematsu, who was our bullpen catcher for many years, slides into Mark Hallberg's assistant coaching role. It makes for a more diverse staff and a very, very prepared staff. Not that we weren't prepared for before, but we just added two guys in Taira and Pedro who are very committed to detail, as is Mark. And so I feel really good about our staff going forward. We'll also have the ability to backfill for Taira, and that's in motion as well.
Awesome. Good stuff. I hope Hallberg's ready to spend an hour every Sunday morning, wake up early with Marty Lurie too. The professor did that for many, many years.
I wonder if the professor is going to keep doing that one.
Yeah, he probably will. I would think he probably can carve out some time for Marty. That's a good call. Okay, I mentioned that we had a lot of questions from our season ticket members, and I went through them ahead of time. A lot of good ones. I thought we would start with Justin Kleiman and Vern Losh asked a question that intrigued me. What made the 2021 Giants so successful? So first, maybe we'll do a little review, and then we'll do a look ahead. So we'll start with kind of the 2021 review. Farhan, you can start. What, in your mind, what made this a record-setting Giants season?
I really think it was the unselfishness of the team and the clubhouse, that culture of selflessness and putting the team above all else. I think sometimes when you talk about that sort of thing, you might be underselling the just pure talent on this team, which I think was really underestimated. And, you look at guys like Darren Roth and Dominic Leone and some of the guys that really stepped forward. There's a lot of talk about, well, our team was projected to win X many games. And, those projections probably didn't appreciate the talent of some of those guys. But, to win 107 games, I mean, it's one thing to be a competitive team, to win 90 games. I mean, 107 is really an extraordinary accomplishment for a team. And I think what really kicked us into that next gear was, just the fact that everybody was kind of pulling on the rope in the same direction, whether it was pitchers handing the ball from one to the other, starting pitchers being really honest with Cap and Andrew Bailey, our pitching coach, on when they thought it was time to bring in a reliever, and again, passing the baton offensively, guys, taking the walk, handing it over to the next guy, our ability to sustain rallies. Talked a lot about, pinch hitting, matching up, and, the platoon aspect to how Cap and his staff manage the roster. I mean, that really takes a lot of buy-in. And, to get the results that these guys got, to have our, team set, tie the record for pinch hit home runs in a season, all the big moments, the couple of times when Cap actually pinch hit for a player who had hit a homer earlier in the game, and then the pinch hitter came in and hit a homer. I mean, we saw so many extraordinary moments like that. And I just think it comes back to the culture, which was really established by Cap and his staff and the veteran leaders on the team. And, once we got off to a good start, it really took on a life of its own. And I think for all of us who've been in baseball a long time, that atmosphere was one of the most special things that we've experienced. And I think that's what really kicked us into a higher gear.
Cap, I want to let you also weigh in if you want to, but it's a good segue to another question that I had circled. Michael Perez asked, favorite moment or game from last season? So Farhan mentioned a few, at least referenced a few. There are a lot to choose from. I mean, there are a lot of cool games and moments, but does one or two stand out? Cap, you want to start?
We had a game in Los Angeles where I felt like the game, one of the most important moments of the game was Jason Bossler's secondary lead, and beating a force play at second base. I don't know the exact date of the game. I just know it was in Los Angeles and it was a huge moment in the game. Obviously, the Donovan Solano home run in Oakland was definitely a monster. And then this is going to surprise. There was something about Game 5 of the DS, even though we didn't win the game, and obviously that can't be your favorite game. But there were so many things in that game that I thought worked out really well for us. Kind of like how we envisioned it. We got an excellent start from Logan Webb, a start that went deep into the game. We had a relatively fresh bullpen in that game. We had Kevin Gausman in the holster. We got several platoon advantages that were kind of exciting. Not that they all worked out, but it felt like through the entire game we were in a good position to win the game. And ultimately the Dodgers got one more hit than us and won the game. But surprisingly, I will always remember that game for us being in a really good position to win it all the way to the end. And there's countless others that I could point to, but yeah, I'm surprisingly, as I'm talking about this, I didn't expect that to be the game, but that's really popping into my mind right now.
Farhan, do you have one or two that pop into your mind?
Yeah, it's interesting that Cap mentioned the Solano homer. I mean, I think for me, that was really up there. There were so many moments. I mean, it was such a season of highs, as you mentioned. I went on some road trips this year, not all of them, but, a lot of times the team was on the road and I was watching on my couch like a lot of our fans and maybe a lot of people on this call. And, I had so many fan moments watching this team because we had so many of those unbelievable moments, like the Tauchman catch in LA. I'm just like, he caught it. Oh my God, he caught it. And, when, when Donovan hit that homer, it was the same thing. I was like, he hit a homer. Oh my God. And, I can't tell you how many raised eyebrows I got from my wife kind of observing me watching these games and kind of going bananas. I think in some ways it sort of reminded her of when I was just a spectator and a fan before, I started working in a front office. So I have a lot of memories of just the great moments on the road watching from my couch. The Solana one is really up there for me.
Yeah, it was great. And Lamont was either the day before or the day after in that same series. It's so easy to pick so many of those. The Giants-Dodgers games this year were just unbelievably dramatic and good. And Posey's home run in game one in the first inning was the way that ballpark reacted to that moment was incredible. One of the ones that'll always stick with me is Yastrzemski's grand slam. And we were playing so well, but to me, that was the night, it was like June and it was the Diamondbacks. So it didn't feel like, oh, this is some huge game, but we fell behind 7-0. And that was the night that I thought, oh my God, this team, I knew we were good. I knew the Giants were going to win a lot of games and be a contending team. By then, I think we knew enough to say that. But that was kind of the night where I thought, this is a little something different. 2021 might be a little more special than I thought. There's just a ton of those moments we'll never forget.
That's true. That was a bit of a defining moment for us, that Yaz homer, because that's, when you're a good team, or that's the hallmark of a good team. I think the guys in the other dugout, no matter what the score is, they think these guys are going to make us sweat this one out, and, when you have moments like that, it just creates a belief within your own dugout and a fear in the other dugout that, you're down 7-0, you get one base runner on, and they think, oh man, here we go. And that's a very powerful thing. So I think that, Homer is a great example of that.
There were so few games this year that were blowouts where the Giants were on the wrong end. Your team was so competitive. You win 107 games, you still lose a bunch of games, but there were very few where in the last few innings there wasn't a whole lot of drama. That was an extraordinary part of this team, I think. Pretty cool. Okay, so we've reminisced. Gabe has a Willie Mays scholarship winner event to go to in about 20 minutes. So I do want to get some of the other questions in before Gabe has to go. You guys spoke, I thought, very eloquently, and at the Buster Posey thing. We got a lot of questions about Buster from our season ticket members, and for good reason. Buster has just been an unbelievable part of our franchise and always will be, but it is a void. Look, on behalf of all the people who asked about Buster, and I'll read off some of their names here in a minute, but did you guys have a sense this was coming? You sort of addressed this at the press conference, but we might as well talk a little bit about it again. And how prepared are you to fill what will be a very big void on this team for lots of different reasons? Gabe, you want to start?
Sure. I actually haven't talked to Farhan about this one, but it's sort of my take on it. I really think that the only person that truly knew if Buster was going to come back all the way through the finish line of the season was Buster. Now, he may have shared with some people his lean. I'm sure he had the conversation with Kristen all the way through the season. But I talked to players right after the season who were in the clubhouse with Buster the entire time. And many of them were like, yeah, we think Buster is going to come back and play an additional year. And look, I had lots of conversations throughout the year with Buster, but he didn't really give much of an indication which way he was leaning. But then as I listened to him talk at the press conference for his retirement, I started to get the sense that he had kind of a blueprint for this. And there was a roadmap in his mind. And he was always going to leave himself that opening at the end to change his mind. But I think Buster knew that it was time to go spend some time with his family. I think the year off taught him a lot of important lessons about that. And look, he said it at the press conference. His body just wasn't responding the way he wanted it to respond, even though he said had such a remarkable year. And even though he was arguably the game's best catcher, it was really hard for him to get through this season. And I think just the fact that he's going out on his own terms after such a remarkable run is pretty cool. I'm really happy for him and his family.
Yeah, I would just add to that. It's really a testament to his character and what a team player he is, that to Cap's point, it just wasn't a topic of conversation. He didn't really make it a topic of conversation in the clubhouse, in the media. And so, whatever he knew, and Cap may be right, and knowing Buster, I mean, he, really thinks through things carefully. He clearly kind of operated with the intent of not making it a storyline that could detract from what the team was trying to accomplish. So again, it's just, we talked about it some at the press conference, somebody who's so outward looking and so aware of how he can positively influence those around him. And I think him keeping that story kind of contained the way he did is just another great example of that.
Yeah, it's almost, to me, it was almost, having known Buster for all these years too, almost like in a weird way, the fact that he had the great year made the decision easier. I assumed all year long it was going to make the decision a lot harder. Like, how can you're having this great year, you're hitting home runs against Walker Buehler and in the biggest moments, and this team wins 107 games. He had a smile on his face the whole season. We saw him smile and laugh on the field more than he ever did in his career. I think he enjoyed this year in a lot of ways more than any other in his whole career. And looking back on it in a weird way, I think that almost sort of cinched it. Like it was a great way to end, as opposed to kind of the way that I was thinking, where maybe most athletes think, I can't walk away now, I've got too much left in the tank. I think for him, it was almost the perfect ending. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think about when I first got to the Giants organization and had seen him win MVPs, Rookie of the Year, World Series trophies, and you always kind of ask the question, what makes this person tick? What makes this player tick? What's going to continue to motivate them? And Buster is not somebody who is motivated by his individual numbers. I think he's motivated more by challenges, more global challenges than that. And so in a way, taking 2020 off and showing that he could come back and play at the level that he did at his peak, that was kind of that last challenge. So we even talked about it at the press conference, there's a feeling of loss that we're not going to have him next year, but to couple that, you have a feeling of gratitude that he actually came back in 2021, which was not a sure thing. And I think having that challenge of being able to show that he could still play at that vintage Buster Posey level was one that he took on and obviously did to tremendous success. And so, yeah, we wish him well, and obviously we're going to miss him tremendously, but we feel really grateful that he was able to be part of the special season.
And I think, Cap, what a gift along Farhan, to his point, like, Logan Webb got a year of working with Buster Posey as he, became not just a big leaguer, but a star on the mound for you. Like, such a gift for so many of those younger guys to get a full season of working with Buster and sort of seeing how he went about game planning. And I mean, to me, that'll carry on, for years, even after Buster's retirement.
Yeah, and I just hope we all remember it, right? Like, Logan Webb's going to go play 10 years. We know that. And so and he's going to, continue to develop, and hopefully he turns into the pitcher that he was for the final 4 months of the season and the postseason. We're hoping that that's who we get for many years. But I do think we have to remember that development happened. A lot of that development happened on Posey's watch. And so we're just going to have to remind ourselves, hey, remember when Logan really started taking off, what was happening back there? And Kurt Casale deserves a little credit for this as well, too. He's an excellent game caller, an excellent leader, an excellent motivator of pitchers. So, I think Logan was fortunate to have Buster's last year, and I think Logan was fortunate to have, Kurt also as a leader. Yeah,
I think that's a good point. Is it official Kurt's coming back? I mean, I don't know the vagaries of some of these options and contracts, but Kurt's coming back, right? Kurt will be back with the Giants?
Yeah, he's in his last year of arbitration. So we haven't officially tendered him a contract, but that's imminent.
Okay, good. I didn't want to just assume. So he's going to be a part of the puzzle, but look, we got so many questions along these lines. Peggy and Michael and Robert and Tyler, Vicky, Jeff, Tim, a lot of questions about the catcher's position, about Buster, and then about Joey Bart, who is going to presumably get a crack at this. So we got to see a glimpse of Joey in 2020, and he had a very productive minor league season in 2021. Both of you guys can take this one on. Joey's readiness, how you guys can help him get ready for taking a big chunk of the starts, if that's going to be the hope and the plan. Farhan, you want to start with one of your top prospects, Joey Bart?
Sure. I mean, we've talked about it over the last couple of weeks. There's never a good time to lose a player like Buster Posey, but in terms of Joey Bart's career arc, this is a great time for him to get this opportunity. He's had some big league time. He had a full year in AAA, did a really nice job. And we conduct exit interviews with all our players at the end of the season, talk about, a little bit of a season in review and ask them, for feedback on how we can better support them. That's a key part of that. And I was really struck by Joey's tone and maturity in that call that we had with him. I think he's really appreciative of the opportunity. He recognizes the moment and just has a lot of determination to put in a lot of work this offseason to even sharpen up certain aspects of his game. He has plans to, work with certain, hitting instructors that he thinks he can benefit from. And we always like hearing that as just a sign that guys are looking to improve. And, we know that our pitching staff, these guys really like throwing to Joey. He's a big target. He's been around these guys. It's there's a level of familiarity. So we're just really looking forward to him getting this opportunity. It's been a little bit back and forth for him the last couple of years, and he's just been a great soldier about it all. And so he's earned this, and we're really excited to see what he can do.
Cap.
Yeah. So I just want to speak to kind of Joey's physical gifts a little bit, and then a little bit to the maturity that Farhan touched on. This is not going to come as a surprise to anybody, but the power is exceptional, and it's not just exceptional to the pull side. It's line to line. He really has an excellent presence in the batter's box, really good natural arc to his swing, and like just a lot of thunder. And that strength actually translates very well behind the plate. Farhan mentioned that it's a big-bodied catcher. Pitchers love throwing to him. Nice big target back there. He really handles the baseball well. He's so strong. There's not a lot of catchers that can move the baseball like he does, and actually sort of he kind of overpowers the baseball a little bit. His feet are excellent. His hips are excellent. Great throwing arm. So everything we want a starting catcher to do on the field, Joey has the capability to do. Layering on the fact that somewhere around spring training this year, you really started to see the maturity and the mental and emotional growth. There was a time when I think he was sort of disappointed that his opportunity wasn't coming right this minute. And he hadn't had a lot of upper level experience that was important to us as a group. And I think he started to come to terms with that he wasn't quite ready. And now, as Farhan mentioned, the window has sort of opened up for him. And I think he's much more ready now than he ever has been, as long as I've been with the Giants. And again, more mature, just as physical, really exciting package with Joe.
One thing I've heard from both of you guys about him over these, especially the last year, is he has gotten to work with a lot of the pitchers who are going to be a part of your big league staff in 2022. I mean, you've had a lot of guys who've gone back and forth. Joey had the experience in 2020, but between spring training and AAA games and that big league experience he had, I mean, there is some familiarity. And my point is, what I've heard from you two is that pitchers really like working with him. There hasn't been, sometimes, Buster sets the bar really high, and then a young guy comes in. I think some veteran pitchers can get a little cranky about, wait, I want that. And I haven't heard that at all from our guys about Joey. I think our pitchers, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they've really enjoyed their chances to pitch to him, work with him.
Yeah, I think Farhan. Go ahead, Far.
Go ahead.
No, it's okay.
I was just going to say, I think a key component of that, and we touched on it earlier, is just the fact that both Buster and Kurt really advocated for Joey, took him under their wing. And, for pitchers, when their catchers are kind of advocating for, the younger player, then that's going to carry a lot of weight. And again, you talk about guys like, someone like a Kevin Gosman, he pitched a lot to Joey in 2020. So again, that experience is there, and it's just a great foundation to build off of.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's a lot of experience with our pitchers, as Dave, you and Farhan both mentioned. There's also familiarity with our coaches, and in particular, Craig Albernaz, our bullpen coach, who was an excellent candidate also for the third base coach position. We just really wanted to keep him out there in the bullpen and working closely with our catchers and pitchers. Has really put in a lot of time with Joey, and I think the two of them have really started to develop an important relationship that's going to pay dividends in 22. So, yeah, familiarity with the pitcher certainly, and also with the staff.
One of my favorite, the SFG Productions puts out those videos from like spring training where they're down there with their cameras. And so, like, my favorites of those were Craig working with the catchers. Those were highly entertaining. I mean, it does give you an insight because we bullpen coach is a relatively anonymous position on a staff. We don't get a lot of exposure to his work. And those were insightful as to his personality and the way he works with those catchers. And it was going all the way down through the minor leagues to some of our very youngest guys and working with the veteran. I really was entertained by those.
I love it. I'm really glad that you actually gave us an opportunity to talk about that. And you mentioned, Craig working with the minor league catchers as well. I mean, he's as involved with what's going on with Patty Bailey and other minor league catchers as he is with our big league catchers. And this is just one of my tiny pet peeves about how people view a coaching staff. So I'm just going to vent here for a moment. The bullpen coach is so critically important. It's such a big deal, right? Like, everybody talks about how bullpen management really matters. And, we talked about the 107 wins. I think our bullpen was a huge part of that. Albie just did a great job of leading that group down there. And also, Buster had a huge year. Casale was, a monster in terms of wins and losses behind the plate. Yeah, I mean, I really want to see Craig Albernaz. I'm glad that he's getting some acknowledgement for it. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. He deserves it. I mean, all your coaches really do. I've never quite seen a staff like the one that you all have put together. I mean, it's just been a huge part of the success of the Giants. It's a great credit to both of you for a couple things, but to me, the number one thing is being willing to cast a wide net, interview a lot of different people, interview people that aren't necessarily your buddies or your minor league roommates or whatever, and try to find the best people, not just the people that you know and are easy to hire. That's just my own 2 cents, but I think it's a credit to both of you for bringing in some really, really pretty dynamic folks.
I was about to make a joke about my minor league roommates, but then I realized it would probably fall pretty those guys would not make great coaches, probably.
What do you think makes if we have 2 minutes left with you, Gabe, before you got to go do your scholarship event? We got a question from Travis Elder. Player to manager. Can you identify players now from your chair who you think would be good future? How do you sort of circle guys who you think might be good managers in the future?
First, I think it's guys who listen well and make adjustments well. Kurt Casale comes to mind immediately. I think he would be an excellent major league coach. Lamont Wade Jr., awesome. Very good listener, very aware, and really wants to learn everything he possibly can about the X's and O's. So I think Lamont would be an excellent choice. Donovan Solano also comes to mind. Nobody's more prepared. Nobody sees the game from more angles. And I know that we weren't looking for just names here, but some of the characteristics are, just interest and inquisitiveness around how the game works. and others are just like caring a lot and wanting to see people improve. If you're a good teammate in the clubhouse and in the dugout, it's likely you're going to be a good teammate on a staff. And Farhan mentioned unselfishness, which I think is one of the major characteristics of our 2021 team. Coaches have to be really selfless. You can't be thinking about yourself at all. You got to give all of your energy to the rest of the staff, and you have to give all of your energy to the players. So those are some characteristics that stand out for me.
Yeah, it's a good answer. I mean, it's a hard job being a coach. It's a hard job. You're putting in huge hours, and you're not getting even it's a hard job to be a manager too, but when the team does well, Gabe, you win awards and get trophies and everybody talks about you, and the coaches don't necessarily get that. And it can be a thankless job. They're putting in longer hours than anybody, certainly more than the broadcasters, but they're there longer hours than the players, than maybe the front office. I don't know, but it's a hard job.
I'm really glad you brought that up. And I think we're really trying to kind of erase the very clear line between some of the people in our clubhouse who aren't coaches, but are very much in this grind every single day with us. And, a couple of analysts that we have, our medical staff who puts in, all of the same hours that you mentioned that coaches put in, and they never get talked about. Even, at least our coaches get, they get some shine, but like our medical staff, almost never, our clubhouse staff, almost never, but they grind just as hard as the coaches and the players do. So yeah, glad that we had an opportunity to talk about that.
I would just add on that. I couldn't agree more. And I think as a show of Cap's appreciation, he should cut up his Manager of the Year trophy into 13 pieces and hand one piece out to each of his coaches.
I love that. When do I get my hands on it?
All right, let's figure out how to cut it up.
It's a good question. Yeah, we can get a crystal saw or something. Anyway, good stuff, Gabe. Go hand out some scholarships to some deserving kids. Thanks for doing that. It was great to talk to you, and hopefully, I'm sure we'll get a chance to do some more of these. But we'll talk to you again sometime soon.
Enjoyed it. Thanks, Dave. See you, Farhan.
Thanks, Cap.
Yeah.
So now it's just you and me.
Yes, sir.
For 15 minutes. Well, it's a good chance for us because we did also, Farhan, get a lot of questions about planning for 2022, and that's your department. I mean, it's a Cap and his staff, and everybody's all involved. It's not just you, but one good one I thought to start with. Justin Vega asked a question about balancing. Okay, whatever your needs are, maybe we'll talk about those, like what your priorities are to fill out your 2022 team. But regardless of what those are, how do you balance going out and signing players, bringing new players in, versus the younger, unproven players you might have in your own organization who you want to ultimately give a chance to? I imagine that's a hard balance. Do you have some thoughts on how you do that from your chair?
Yeah, it's especially a challenge coming off a season like we did, where expectations are high and we want to have just as good of a season next year. And you wind up feeling a lot of pressure, whether it's self-inflicted or, external or public, to kind of have a brand name on every one of your 26 projected opening day roster spots. There's a temptation to try to fill all those roster spots with players that people have heard of, that have some history at the major league level. But one of the key sources of our success over the last few years has been breaking in players, giving players opportunities that maybe wouldn't have fit that bill. So you think about somebody like Yaz in 2019, or Darren Ruff in 2020, or Lamont Wade in 2021, and there are many others that fit that description. So sometimes you have to live with what feels like a little bit of a discomfort in the offseason of saying, we're going to leave that roster spot open. We have a lot of good players in AAA, whether they're prospects or guys that we sign for depth, and know that somebody could break through. I think it's really important culturally for our organization, being a team that relies on our AAA roster a lot, for those players to think, hey, I'm going to get a chance. People have gotten a chance before, and this roster isn't completely locked up. So we're talking very actively on the free agent front on a number of different positions and roles on our team. But we do want to leave a little bit of latitude for guys to break through, because that's been, a key part of our formula here recently.
I thought culturally, Steven Duggar is a very popular player in the organization, and he'd gotten some chances and it had some success and then some failures. And I thought culturally it was really a huge deal when he got another chance. That you get your one shot and it doesn't go the way you want it, and you're not buried forever. I mean, I thought that was a really good message to send to everybody down there. That, Steven Duggar ended up helping you win some of the biggest games of the year, when there was a time when I thought, well, we probably won't see any more of Steven in 2021. To me, that was a demonstration, not just to your big league team, but to everybody down below, that you can get another crack at it.
Yeah, and Steven's a great example, just a great human being, in addition to, being a very talented player, and just someone who's been really accountable over the last few years. He's had some injuries. He's had some stretches where he didn't produce. And, every time we've sat with him and talked about areas for improvement, he takes it really seriously. So that's very rewarding to see a player like that put the work in and have those moments. And like you said, he's so well liked that it's an even more special moment for the organization. And, you love the fact that when he comes up and he's getting big hits, the triple he hit off of Walker Buehler, I think it was, in that last series against the Dodgers. And it's not just us watching, but it's, the AAA coaching staff and the players down there that he played with. And that gives them all a sense of belief and inclusion. And that's a really powerful thing for us.
Arguably the biggest game of the whole year for you was that Sunday afternoon game, the last time you got a chance to play him head to head. And it was, you were going to be 2 games up, or it was going to be tied. And he had one of the biggest hits of the year. Thairo Estrada comes to mind as a guy who, I look at, and I watched him play this year, and I thought, man, that guy deserves a chance to show what he can do. Like, it was so crowded at his spots, it was hard to give him those at bats. But he's not going to appear on anybody's like top 50 prospect list. He's been around for a few years. He's had some big league experience, but I looked at him as a guy, man, we need to find a way to give him some at bats. Let him see if he can do it.
Yeah, Duggar and Estrada are examples of 2 guys that we would like to see, really have an opportunity to make the opening day roster and be with us all year and maybe get more at bats than they got this year. So again, that takes a certain discipline. There are going to be temptations on the position player side. Hey, maybe we sign this guy who can be a 4th outfielder, and there are things we like about him. But you want to make sure that these guys still have a path to being on the team because of what they did this year.
You do need some pitching. Is that fair to say?
That's fair, sure.
So
yeah, it's we've already seen early on that's a pretty active segment of the market. A few deals have come in already. We're talking on a number of fronts. We've talked about how a lot of our own free agents are priorities of ours, just because not just the performance that they had, but they fit in so well culturally with what we have. We talked about the importance of trying to carry that continuity over. And so I think something could even happen in the next few days. We're trying to get down the road on a number of our starting pitching targets and making some progress. So whether that's some of the guys that were here in 2021 or going outside the organization, we're talking to a number of guys, because like you said, we need to fill out that rotation. And one guy I will mention who kind of fits the same vein as Duggar and Estrada on the pitching side is Tyler Beatty, who just had a little bit of an uneven campaign coming back from Tommy John surgery. But you go back to the progress he made in 2019, the way he came into camp in 2020, before we got shut down, he was the most impressive pitcher on our roster. Like, we thought we might get an ace type season out of him. And so, we want to make sure he has a path to crack that starting rotation too, because his upside, as we've seen in little spurts here recently, is really high.
Yeah, Logan Webb's a good example of a guy who it doesn't have to work right away. Logan had some success, but it wasn't like he was blowing people away. So I like that. Tyler Beatty's a good name. Just as a follow-up from your position, because you're not a guy, you do not like to be reactive. I know that about you. You have a plan, you have an idea. You're not going to let outside influences shape the way you think. You're very confident in your own abilities to evaluate and decide what the best moves are. But when the market does start to move really fast in an area, does that ever influence you to say, we got to jump in, or does that affect the timeline at least at all?
Absolutely. And again, I think we're seeing it. We're seeing a very active starting pitching market. And you do wonder how much of that has to do with going from 60 games to 162 games, pitching staffs that were stretched thin, guys that fatigued at the end of the season, and teams feeling it's really important to build in added depth. I also think that we're seeing a little bit of the trickle effect of the lost minor league season in 2020, a lost year of development. And, there's probably a wave of starting pitchers that would be on the cusp of the big leagues right now who just aren't there because they didn't get the chance to advance in 2020. So a lot of those factors, I think, are feeding into the market for pitching, which obviously we are in, but it's one of the more active starting pitching markets I can remember.
Speaking of pitching, Camilo Doval was just an absolute revelation down the stretch. You do those exit interview calls, you guys talk, decompress at the end of the year about what you saw and what you need. And is there a plan for Camilo Doval? Are we going to see him in that sort of same role that he was in the end of the year at the start of 2022?
Yeah, it's kind of whatever you figured out the last month and a half of the season, just keep doing that, And it's really a credit to our coaching staff, our player development group, the guys in Sacramento, because let's face it, when he was up earlier in the year, he really struggled. He had some tough moments, ran into a little bit of bad luck. But isn't it amazing how young relievers, they always seem to have bad luck. It's a walk, it's a bloop, and they just can't sort of contain the damage, even when guys that are throwing 100. And making that leap from, things can spiral to I'm in total control of the game. It was really amazing how the light switch turned for him. And, in Sacramento, when he went down after the big league stint, it wasn't great. He got better. He built some momentum. But to be honest, we didn't know what we were going to get when we brought him back up. We just kind of wanted to get another look at him. And, Andrew Bailey, Cap, they threw him right into the fire. And that was really impressive because a lot of times it's easy with a young player to say, we're not going to put him in a pressure situation. And a reliever can come up for a week and not get in a game if you're playing a bunch of close ones. But it's a credit to them that they showed the confidence to get him back in there. And I think that confidence is part of what got him over the hump and made him such an impressive. For this guy to come in and win reliever of the month in September, what an accomplishment and how far he came. It's really, really exciting to think about what he can do for us in a full season next year.
Amazing. I should add to my favorite moments of the year. I don't know if you were on the road trip or you were watching our telecast, but when we saw JP Martinez go over to him, I think it was in San Diego, and he came in, it's like bases loaded, nobody out, Manny Machado's up, he gets a strikeout and a double play and nobody scores, and he just walks back into the dugout like it's a spring training game, and JP comes over and does the check to see if he has a pulse. That was one of my favorite moments of the year.
Yeah, I might not have seen that because I probably fainted while Doval was getting out of it.
Yeah, probably so. Trades. Are trades a part of your one thing about your roster? You have a packed roster. You have a lot of talented players. One way to alleviate that is by maneuvering a little bit with some trades. Are you thinking that a trade or two or more could be a part of your offseason?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now we are, coming up on the reserve list deadline, which is in a couple of days, when you've got to add your players to the 40-man roster that you want to protect from the Rule 5 draft. So there's a lot of activity around the league as teams try to figure out who's going on their 40 and whether they need to make roster spots. One area that we really want to add is just AAA pitching depth, because even if we fill out our rotation with veteran guys, we know how important it is to have 8-9 starting pitchers that you feel good about getting through a season. So, we may see a trade along those lines for, a guy who's performed well in AA, AAA that we think can be in our Sacramento rotation, along the lines of a Sean Jelly and a Sammy Long, and just provide that next layer of depth, behind hopefully some of the guys that we'll add in free agency here over the next few weeks.
One lesson I think you have taught me over these last few years, there's a lot of value in a guy who, even if it's for 3 innings, can come up and give you some quality in one of those spots. Like the idea of, do we have starting pitching depth? Well, hopefully you have as much as you can pile up, but it doesn't always have to be, the next Logan Webb who's going to come up and pitch 7 innings for you. But there were a lot of instances this year where Sammy Long or whoever gave you 3-4 innings and it helped you win a game. It helped you save a couple guys in the bullpen. I mean, I think my whole view of that has changed over these last few years, watching the way you guys have managed the roster.
No question. I mean, to have a strike thrower, a young strike thrower who can come up and, like you said, save the rest of the staff. I mean, when the rest of the bullpen gets a day off, it's so valuable, not just, physically for those guys, but just psychologically. They see a Sammy Long come in the game and they say, he's got it the rest of the way. That's a huge mental reset for the rest of the bullpen. And like you said, when you have an offense like we do and a team that never feels like they're out of a game, you could be down 5-2, 6-2, and a guy starts throwing up zeros, the offense starts stirring a little bit, and you're right, that's been key for us. So again, we never, every roster spot on our team, we want to have somebody who can help us win a game on any given day. And I think that was a theme that kind of ran throughout our 2021 season.
For years, I thought the Giants won a lot of games because the first guy that comes to mind is Guillermo Mota. The Giants had Guillermo Mota, and they could be behind 6-2, and Guillermo would come in and throw 2 scoreless innings, and the Giants had a chance to come from behind, and a few times a year they did. And then Yusmeiro Petit, maybe even to a greater degree, did that over and over again. Come into a game where your team is trailing by 2-3 runs, you're thinking maybe it's not going to be our night, and just holding the ability to hold the line and eat up some innings along the way wins you a handful of extra games every year.
Yeah, and Yusmeiro Petit is a great example because not only did he, pitch effectively, but he pitched quickly. He threw a ton of strikes. He'd have 10, 12 pitch innings. And we talked all year, and you may remember even in spring, Dave, we talked about time of possession. We want to win time of possession. If you're grinding out at bats and your pitchers are getting quick outs, it's going to result in good things happening. So when you have that in your middle relief, that's a good way to try to get back in games.
Yeah. All right. Last question, because we're running out of time. You obviously have a lot to do. You just rattled off a list of things that are coming up. So what's the calendar look like for you here now? Will agents and free agents be active over the Thanksgiving week? Do things quiet down for a few days? What's the next week or 2 or 3 look like from your perspective?
Yeah, like we talked about, the reserve lists are coming up due at the end of this week. So I expect the next 48 hours to be pretty busy. And we've got some protection decisions to make as well that we're going to meet about tomorrow. There is a lot of activity in the free agent market. Players are, goes without saying, but they're people, they're human beings. It's great for them psychologically to know where they're going to be next season. When they head home for Thanksgiving with the family, to be able to tell people, yeah, I signed with this team. It's a big deal. And so I would expect a lot of activity the next few days, people and players trying to get deals done before then. And from that point, we'll see, but I do expect next week leading into Thanksgiving to be busy. We've started to see the dam break a little bit on free agent signings. And I think once that momentum goes up, we could see a lot of deals around baseball over the next week or so.
Well, great stuff, Farhan. It was great to catch up with you, with Cap. I think you said it beautifully when we first started. Our Giant season ticket members are just a really big part of what we do. I thought we had the best home field advantage of any team in baseball this year. Our home crowds were so energetic, and I thought our team got just an enormous boost from the way that our crowds interacted with our players. And so we appreciate all of them, and we appreciate your time talking to so many of them tonight.
Absolutely. Totally echo that. I mean, I know that it was not comfortable for the Dodgers players and front office people to come to our ballpark for those games, and making the opposition uncomfortable, especially when it's the Dodgers, is a great thing. So thank you to all of you out there who created that uncomfortable atmosphere. And looking forward to more of that in 2022.
Let's keep it that way. Farhan, great stuff. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. See you, Dave.
Okay, thanks. And thanks to everybody for being with us. We don't have an announcement for our next Chalk Talk. I'm sure we're going to do one. Thanks to Pete's for helping us put this on. But good work by everybody. And we'll talk to you all soon. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday and go Giants.